I want to just ask if you'll stop and just to pray with me as we get ready to get started today. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we come to you, and I know some of us here know you well and believe in you strongly. I know some of us here we believe in you, we have some questions and perhaps some doubts. And then there's probably some of us here, Lord, who have some deep skepticism and think that what we're doing right now is really a totally empty exercise. Lord, I pray that you would speak to all three groups and that you would make yourself real. Lord, give us evidence where we have gaps in our knowledge. Help us experience and come to know you. Answer some of our questions and give us what we need to move forward where you choose not to answer the question fully. Lord, I pray that you would just guide us and help us hear from you in our time together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I have been praying for this group and this study for quite some time and really feel quite a load on me right now because we have promised and asked and said that we were going to answer some of your biggest questions that you've ever had about God, about the Bible, about real-life issues. And there's a lot of big questions out there. One of the things I don't want to pretend for you today is that there are easy answers to every question that's out there. And even though we're going to start into the questions kind of one at a time next week, today what we want to do is set a stage for how do you go about searching for and finding answers to big questions like God's existence. One of the things I want to let you know is that we're a place that we understand what it's like to be at different points in your faith journey and not really be all there yet. We're aware that some of you are not yet believers. We're aware some of you may be deep skeptics. Some of you today are here because you don't believe anything about religion, but you happen to be married to or friends of a religious nut, and this is the thing you do once a year so that they'll leave you alone the rest of the year. Okay, we're aware of that. Okay, so I just want to throw that out there and just kind of clear the air and just say it's okay. We're cool with that. We know why you're here, and it's okay. We still love you. Okay, and we want this to be a place where you can ask questions. Now, one of the best places to ask questions and really find some answers is not just necessarily here on Sunday morning. I mean, you can wave your hand at me, but I'll probably ignore you right now. It's not because I don't love you, but we've got a larger group, and once you ask a question, we go there. We just don't have time to do it in this setting. But in our growth groups that you see in your program, we've got 4 settings where there's a whole lot of answers and things that you can find, and you can talk to other people asking some of the same questions, and there's a whole lot of other resources we'll go into. But this is a place, in general, our church is a community where we want you to ask questions. We understand what it's like to be in different points of the faith journey, and we want to help you. We want to go there with you. We want to journey with you. But there aren't always easy answers to every single question that's out there. And haven't all of us been burned at some time by bad experiences? Okay, like how many of you have ever bought a car that you thought was the greatest thing when you drove it off that lot, and then you rounded the corner and the engine fell out of it? I bought a car one time that we checked it out. I had my grandfather, who's like the guru of he's passed on now, but he was like, he could smell a lemon a mile away. I thought he was excellent at picking out cars, and had him help me check this thing out. And and when I left, had him chew the guy down a few more $100s, and came back. Thought I had a good car, and great old Ford Escort, and It only took me about a month to realize that most cars you need to go 3,000 miles and then you have to change the oil because the oil in it is bad. Well, this car needed more oil every 500 miles or so because it was gone. Okay, it didn't need a change of oil; it needed some more. Okay, so every time we stopped, fill up with some gas, fill up with some oil. It was a lemon. How many of you had one of those at some point in your life? Okay, there you go. And so, that's why car shopping is kind of stressful because, the guy selling it doesn't always have our best interest at heart. And we can even be fooled. We can think something is great and it not be what we thought it was going to be. Later we find that out. Some of us have felt that even more painfully in relationships. Don't raise your hand on this one. But if you ever dated somebody in your life and early in that experience, you thought, this is the greatest guy ever. This is the most, beautiful woman ever. And later you found out that, yes, they were beautiful or they looked good, but they were also psychotic. And there was all kinds of other issues that went along with that. And you were fooled, okay? Some of you were fooled so well, you married that person, okay? And then later you found out. And some of you are still married to that person, and you're still dealing with that. And so therefore you come to church and they say, hey, we've got some other things to tell you that are true. And you're saying, yeah, been there, done that, heard that. Pardon me if I fold my arms up and kind of, look at you crazy and say, is this really true? I want to share with you, this isn't even on your outline, but by the way, if you want to pull your outline out, we'll help you fill in some of the blanks as we go on, but here's a bonus verse that you can write down on there somewhere and look at later. But in 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 16, it says this. This is Peter, and if you don't know the story, I'll just real quickly catch you up. He's one of the 12 disciples of Jesus. He was one of the 3 who hung around Jesus a whole lot, and Peter is the one who denied Jesus 3 times right before he went to the cross. He was the one who 24 hours earlier, he told Jesus, he said, look, I'm with you so much, I'm so loyal to you, I would never deny you. I will go to the death for you. And Jesus said, you don't even know yourself as well as you think you know how you relate with me, and in 24 hours you're going to deny me 3 different times. And Peter's like, no way, I'll never do that. What we don't hear is the other disciples said the same thing, I would never deny you. Well, in 24 hours, Peter denied that he knew Jesus. Jesus got arrested. Peter didn't know that was coming. And he got arrested and he got scared. And he denied that he knew him 3 different times. And the last time he denied him, he was sitting across the courtyard looking at Jesus. And Jesus, couldn't hear his whole conversation, but Jesus knew what was going on. He just kind of looked across. And Peter denied him and then ran out the door. And just heartbroken because he thought everything he believed in life was gone. What we also find out is these other disciples who were behind Peter that night, and they said, hey, we'll be with you too. We'll never deny you. Every one of them cut loose and ran. They ran because they thought everything they believed in was gone and it didn't work and was messed up. Later on, after they see a risen Lord, I want you to notice something here in 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 16. And how many of you were at the Easter egg hunt yesterday? Okay. All the kids are out of the room, right? All right. My wife chastised me yesterday, but I said something at the egg hunt that I strongly believe in, but maybe I shouldn't have said it there, but it's because I'm working on this stuff here. I told the kids, I said, you realize this isn't real, okay? And so I saw parents, covering the ears of their kids and stuff, and I'm sorry. I went adult pastor right there and went to get to the truth. The problem is I think a lot of us are like Peter pre the crucifixion, and we think that, you know what, I got to be careful and not poke my faith too much, because if I look beneath the curtain, remember the Wizard of Oz movie? Don't look back here. There's nothing here. I'm afraid that some of us think that if I poke my faith too much, that when I really look at it, I'm going to find out there isn't any evidence for it. And then everything I have is a lie, and then I'm going to be caught. So I'd rather just kind of not know. I'd kind of just believe the good stuff about it and just not go there. Well, we're going to jump ahead just for one step, and then we'll come back and help us learn how to process this. But here's Peter's conclusion. After he had witnessed and thought his faith was on a wreck, he saw Jesus come back to life, and listen to what he said. Verse 16, 2 Peter 1:16, for we did not follow cleverly contrived myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Instead, we were eyewitnesses of His majesty. Now, here's all I want you to get out of this right now. Peter is saying, we did not make this up. He's not saying that this is a bunch of, even if it's not true, it has some good morals in it. He's saying this really happened. And so if it didn't really happen, if there isn't some evidence behind this, then at some point we can throw out everything else along with it too. Okay? And so I tell you that just to say this, there is truth that's out there. There is evidence behind that truth. And you don't have to be afraid to poke your faith a little bit and see if it's real and see what's back there. Now sometimes, if you're like me, when you first start studying some of this stuff, some of it is the evidence isn't what you thought it was going to be. And sometimes some of you may take some half steps backwards in your faith for a little bit before you take some steps forward. And that's okay. I just want you to see that out there is some evidence. One of the first followers of Jesus who had his world rocked, who thought it was all a lie, he thought he messed up for years, he found out there was some real stuff there. And he was convincing everybody else of that same thing. He said, this isn't a myth, okay? So I want you to know that. But on this side of that, we certainly have some doubts, don't we? We're aware of cults that have been out there. We're aware of, charismatic figures like, Jim Jones, who can get a bunch of people together, build an ideal community, and then bring out the Kool-Aid. And those people, I saw a documentary on that recently, they weren't duped into drinking that. They knew. A lot of them knew they were following him to death, but thought that was going to mean some great thing in doing that. And absolutely crazy. And so we have our guard up there. And so before we dive in and look at what does it mean to go on a quest for truth, what does it mean to look behind the faith and find the reasons for that? If you're a believer, what does it mean to get some more reinforcements for that? If you're a skeptic, to find out if you've been on the right side of things or not. First I thought, well, let's break the ice a little bit and just kind of give us an illustration for this. And so what we did today is we have done, most time you come to churches and you're aware that somewhere during the service we're going to pass around offering baskets, right? If you didn't know that, it is coming, okay? We will do that, all right? And it's not because we just absolutely want your money, but Pastor Allen likes to eat, and I kind of along with him too. No, that's not the whole deal there. But we decided we're going to break that stereotype a little bit. And how many of you have ever, if you've been hanging out here long enough, this will be a difference. How many of you have ever been given money from a church? Everybody given money? Some of you have, okay? Been here long enough, it happens ever so often, okay? Well, today's one of those days. Underneath some of your chairs, we have placed some money, okay? We have some dollar bills, some $5 bills, some $10 bills. And so if you believe us, okay, look under your chair right now and see. It may be taped pretty well and fastened there. You might have to look at it. But if you think there's some money under there, go ahead and take a look, all right? You got some? Yeah. All right. All right. Now don't start looking under everybody else's chair, okay? God has set things up. If it's under your chair, it's yours, okay? All right. How many of you how many of you got some money just now? Hold your hand up, okay? Man, Aubrey got some more. All right, Aubrey is my new best friend. I'm going to be hanging out with her all the time. All right? And how many of you got some $1 bills? All right, how many of you got some 5s? How many of you got some 10s? There you go. All right? Neat stuff there. Now, how many of you, just be honest, say, you know what? I didn't even look under my chair. I just didn't do it. All right? You always got to have one in the room. Now, did you check under his chair for him? You tried? Okay. There might still be some loose money. I don't remember. I didn't count all the hands to see how many things are out there or whatever. So there may be still some there or not. And that's up to you if you want to look there. But some of you may have said that I didn't want to go there. I'm just, no, I'm not going to do that. No, they're lying to me. Everybody wants to check all the other ones. Yeah, you can, Phil, knock yourself out. If you want to crawl under here right now, just, go for it. That's up to you. How many of you think next Sunday you'll be checking under the chairs? Some of you, that's going to be a new tradition. I come to church, look under my chair. You just never know, right? And see. But we use that to illustrate a couple things. One is that sometimes there's some things going on in the world that you don't know about. Would you agree? I mean, I don't think there was anybody in here who came in today and said, I think I might find some money today under my chair. That's what I'm looking for. Because that's not a typical thing that happens. But it was true, okay? And you have people around you, or maybe you're one of those people that say, there was money under there. And so I ask you to pursue this with an open mind and recognize that there are some truths out there that are very true, very real, but you may not know about. And also that there are some unexpected things. Some of you may say, you know what? I know what I believe. In fact, most of us say, I know what I believe. And some of you may be saying that pointing toward God in the Bible, and some of you may say, I know what I believe, and it's pointing saying there isn't a God and the Bible isn't true. And I say to both of you, be willing to go wherever the evidence is going to take you. Be willing to go on a search and find some unexpected things. As a believer in Christ, I have found many times that things I thought were true about God turned out to be very different. Things I thought I was supposed to do with my life turned out to be different. It's not necessarily the way I want it to go or the way I wanted it to be. But as somebody who wants to base his life on truth, what I found is I have to go where the evidence takes me, and I have to believe what is, not just the way I want it to be. First of all, I want us to look at some beginning things here. There were a variety of perspectives about truth in the Bible. John 14:5. How many of you have heard of a guy named Thomas? Some of you thought he has a first name called Doubting, and his last name was Thomas. Doubting Thomas. He's actually one of my favorite disciples, because what you may not know about Thomas is that he eventually became one of the most devout followers of Jesus. We believe he was martyred for his faith. We believe that he headed east toward India and spread the gospel everywhere he went. There are people in that part of the world who have evidence that he brought the gospel to them, and he laid a trail with there. We don't know so much about that. That's not in the Bible. What we hear is a lot of his doubts. But just like Peter was the big public denier of Jesus, and the other disciples kind of did too, because they ran, Thomas kind of gave voice to doubts that a lot of the other disciples had as well. But here's one of his questions. The Lord was telling him things about heaven and things that were getting ready to happen and where he was going to go. And Thomas is like, well, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way? He's the guy who would just blurt out the question that everybody else was wondering about. And so this was one of his original disciples. So if it's okay for Thomas to have some doubts, it's okay to be at some juncture in your life. Look at Matthew 28:17. Most of us Christians, we know down in verse 19 and 20, Jesus turned to all His followers and He says, I want you to go into all the world and make disciples of every nation and baptize them and teach them everything that you've learned about. But right before that, it says that here you had some people who saw Him. So they saw Jesus. This is after He had risen from the dead. They saw Him, and it says, when they saw Him, they worshiped, but some doubted. The impression is that they all were kind of worshiping Him, but some of them were worshiping and they were like looking like this. Like, is that really Jesus? Man, I don't know. Is that a ghost? Is this really true? Am I dreaming this? They had some issues going on in their lives at that time. Some of them doubted. In Hebrews 11:6, though, it begins to talk about faith. And I want you to notice what it says here. It says, without faith, it is impossible to please God. For the one who draws near to Him must believe that He exists and that He rewards those who seek Him. What I want to ask you guys to do, regardless of where you are in your faith right now, regardless of whether I'm a strong believer in Christ, regardless of whether I'm a skeptic or somewhere in the middle, I want to ask that you consider again what it means to have faith. And I want you to understand something. Even though there are a lot of evidence and signs pointing toward the existence of God, we're not ever going to get to a place where we can say, hey, look, right there's God. Okay? We're not going to be able to totally remove every bit of need for faith. At some point, you will need some faith. But you use faith every single day. How many of you have ever been in a jury pool? You ever been on a jury? Okay? I don't know if any of you, and I don't want to get into that right now, but I don't know if any of you have ever been on a murder trial or something like that. I love watching stuff on television where they lay out, half the episodes laying out, the signs that this person may be guilty, and the other half's laying out the signs that may be innocent. At the end, they kind of tell you what was concluded. But, a lot of times you get on a trial like that. I've kind of always wanted to be, in a jury. Of course, who knows? Well, I'll probably get on a boring tax fraud case or something someday and get locked up for, 2 months and lose half my life and have to deal with all that stuff. But, sometimes I'd want to be on there because I like considering the evidence. But here's the thing. If you're on a jury like that, you'd love to have videotaped evidence, right? You love to have the DNA, the stuff that just says, he did it, okay? Or she's innocent. You'd love to have it one way or the other and make it clear. But the reason most trials go to a jury and don't get settled ahead of time in some way, they're not pled out in some way, is because there's only circumstantial evidence. There's some evidence that seems to point this way toward the guilt, and there's some evidence that seems to point this way toward the innocence. And the jury's job is to look at those things and say, you know what, we don't have any clear-cut, factual stuff that's just, boom, it's right here, and it's definitely saying he did it or he didn't do it. But at the end of the day, we got to make a decision. And it's critical, the decision that we make, because if we make the wrong one, we could set a guilty man free, or we could lock up or execute an innocent man. And so it's critical that we come up with some kind of decision. We have to consider the evidence. But you have to be willing to go there, okay? You have to be willing to at least be open to whatever is there. One of the things they often do when you are getting ready to be on a panel for a jury is they ask you some questions to see if you're already prejudiced about this, okay? Like, for instance, if you already know the murder, okay, or you're best friends with the murder victim or whatever, they're not going to let you be on the jury because you want it to be one way or the other. You're already biased. You're not going to be objective. And so in this issue, it's kind of hard because we kind of are tied into this. Some of us are rooting. I hope there's a God. Some of us are saying, you know what? The way I've been going, I hope there's not a God. And we're already rooting one way. And either way, you're not totally off the hook. You're going to be biased. You're going to be partial. But you're also going to need some faith somewhere along the way to take you the rest of the way. So you're going to have that. But first of all, what I want us to see is this. We need to define our terms. Because what is faith? A lot of us have been sold a wrong idea about what faith is. The wrong idea about faith often is that faith is just blind. It's a leap in the dark. You ever heard faith described that way? Faith is often described as just a blind leap in the dark. Look at in Hebrews 11:1, we have a definition of faith, but this can be unpacked two different ways to mean two different things. It says, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for, the proof of what is not seen. Now sometimes we see that verse there, faith is the reality, faith is the proof, and we say, well, that means that you don't need any proof, you don't need any evidence. That's not what that verse is saying. What that verse is saying is that faith is where you pick up after the evidence runs out. Let me give you an illustration. When I grew up, I lived on a farm that had 300 acres of cow trails and some wooded area. And me and my brother used to ride our bikes all over that place. And so we knew where every little worn dirt path that the cows had made, we knew where it went. And when to turn here, when to turn here. And so instead of having to ride over grass, we could ride our bikes over hard dirt anywhere we wanted to go. We knew where all of them went. And there were some places there where there were some natural rocky kind of crags and some little ledges and things. And there wasn't this exact scenario, but I want to paint something for you here. Let's say in one particular place there that as I'm coming along, I get to a place to where there's a ledge. A rock leads to here and about 4 feet out. So just like enough steps so you have to kind of do a hop, a little more of a jump, not quite a little bit longer than just a long step. About 4 feet over is another ledge, but down in the middle is a chasm. It drops down 12, 15 feet. Enough that you could hurt yourself pretty bad if you didn't, get all the way across. Not far across. Easy jump for anybody who's relatively healthy. Okay, anybody can jump that far, but you have to go that far. Let's say me and my brother every single day we're out going over this farm, and we come across this place, and we're just used to going right. We just hop right across and go on to where we want to go on to the next place, and we do this all the time. But on one particular day, we come out here, and a fog rolls in, and it is the densest fog we've ever seen. And for some stupid reason, we don't turn around and go home. We just keep going along the trail, and we get over to this spot right here, and this fog is so dense at this point that we can see, but we can only see 2 feet in front of us. And so we get to this place where this ledge is, and we can see, yes, it doesn't go past here. We're at that place. Here's the ledge. We can see 2 feet, but we can't see 4 feet. We can't see it's out there. But we really badly want to go on this other way. We want to continue on. And we know exactly where we are because we've been there hundreds, maybe thousands of times. If we leap across to the other side, what expectation do we have that there's going to be something there? Like scale of 0 to 100, what do you think? 100, okay? I can't see it, but I know it's there because I've been there hundreds of times, okay? And I've been that, and I know how, that time I'll probably make sure I jump 5 or 6 feet, okay? Or maybe 10, just to make sure. But I really only have to go 4, and that's going to be enough, and it's okay. It's not dangerous. But let's just change it up just a little bit. Let's say now I'm hiking up in the mountains. And as we're walking along in the mountains, and I'm telling my brother, I say, this place looks a lot like the way we used to grow up as kids. And man, here we go. On this particular day, the fog rolls in, and we're following the trail, and you can only see 2 feet in front of you. And we come to a place on the mountains where we get to a ledge, and we can tell that it drops off. We can't tell how far down it is. But we say, you know what, this looks exactly like that ledge we had when we were growing up. And you know, just 4 feet out was something on the other side. And so we've never been here before, but what do you say, let's just go for it? Let's just say from right here, we just jump, let's jump 5 feet, make sure you get across, and then land out there. How many of you think that that's a good idea? All right? Because when I jump, is that faith? According to some people's definition, that would be faith. According to my definition, that is stupidity, okay? That is foolishness, okay? Even worse than stupidity, you know? You will soon be coming to my funeral, okay? That was my funeral jump that I'm about ready to do. Because there's no proof at all that there's anything. I've never been there before. I have no evidence that there's anything out there. Now, there might be, but I'm just hoping, okay? I'm guessing. I got nothing pointing me there. And the difference is this. Faith does not ignore evidence. Faith picks up where the evidence is lacking. The evidence that you can put your hands on and touch and see. So back to the farm, I'm here. And me and my brother are looking over. This place we've been over hundreds of times. Can I see out there in that dense fog? I can't tell. I can't see it, but I have evidence from the past. I've been there before. I have reason to think there. So I can't see it. Faith picks up where I can't see anymore. Okay? And so I want to tell you, your search today for God and for big answers is going to be a lot like that. A lot of times you're going to get a pile of evidence here and a pile of evidence here, and you have to say, I think the combined evidence is pointing me there. I think when I get to this fork in the road, that I think there's more evidence saying the truth is that way than it's saying that it's that way. Faith is what takes you where the evidence leaves off. Does that make sense? And that's the definition we want to go with. I got down on your outline. The direction one believes the truth lies at the end of the trail of evidence. Now, in Matthew 22:37, we read this. As Christians, this is our theme verse. This is what we ought to be doing with everything in our lives. It says, we're to love the Lord your God. The greatest command we have is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Now, here's what a lot of us think. A lot of us think that going to church and being a good person and being religious is really about emotion. And we say, don't poke your faith too much. You might find that there isn't anything behind the curtain, okay? It's about emotion. It's about what you feel, okay? What you feel is what's real, okay? How many of you know what you feel isn't always real, okay? Don't even need to go there, right? We know there's some problems with that. We have felt things. I think this person will be nice to me the rest of my life, okay? And they didn't, okay? I felt that way, but they didn't turn out to be that way. We know that kind of thing. I think this car is the greatest thing ever. It's not, okay? We get fooled that way. But I want you to notice something here. Some of us, there is emotion involved in relationships. There is emotion involved in following God. There is emotion involved in religion, okay? There is emotion involved in faith. There are feelings involved in those things. I'm not trying to dismiss all of that, but I'm just saying that it has to be more. Jesus actually called for more. He said you don't have to check your brains at the door. You don't have, when you come to church, to say, you know what, time to have the emotions, but let's put our brain aside because we don't need that in here. In fact, it might mess up the experience when we get in here. He said, I want you to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Let me give you another illustration about this. About 12 years ago, I was invited to go to a dinner. At this dinner, they were going to be talking about how to help your finances. And how many of you have ever been invited to a free 2-day stay at Massanutten or some other timeshare or something like that? Okay, so you get what I'm talking about, right? It was going to be one of those kind of deals where I knew it was a free seminar and a free dinner, but I knew that there was going to be a presentation, okay? Going to be a sales pitch. You know, and sometimes we just say no because we don't want the sales pitch, right? You know, and we don't even care if it's going to be the greatest thing ever, okay? But we've been burnt so many times, we just don't like it, okay? We don't want to go there. But on this particular time in our life, our economics were really low. And so I was always looking for free dates, okay? And so I was able to, I said, I was waiting. I was like, all right, it's going to be a sales pitch, but it doesn't say it on here. So I can tell, I don't really have to tell her that I know it was going to be a sales pitch because it doesn't say it here. I can say I'm duped just like you when it happens, but we get a free dinner, right? So I'm going home, hey, Linda, you want a free dinner, And she's like, yeah, let's get free dinner. So somehow we got the kids pawned off on somebody else, and off we go to our free dinner. And sure enough, there's a sales pitch. Now, it was a really nice presentation, okay? And it showed us some good things, and there were some helpful things, some things I agreed with. And then at the end, there was this next thing you had to do. Or you didn't have to do it, but they invite somebody to come over to your house and look over some things to help you with your finances. And so we took them up on that. And then there was the next thing, and they said, well, we have a business opportunity. Would you consider this? And by this time, everything they've told me so far is true. But what I want to lead you up to was what for me was kind of like the church experience may have been for some of you. They were going to tell you about how to be part of the business, okay? And so we're invited to this place up in Manassas, and we go in, and we get there. There's about 40 people there, and I'm thinking, all right, this is a finance business, so I'm expecting, suits and ties and calculators and sharp business people and, that kind of stuff. And so I'm kind of there, and my whole mode is when I'm there, I am skeptic to the core. I'm checking this out. I'm just kind of analyzing everything there. And if you know me very well, I'm not real emotional, but I'm very analytical. So I'm thinking through everything. And so I know the things I've been told about the finances, but here's how the meeting started. Right before the meeting started, somebody kicks on some music. And it was like, not elevator music or, what I thought. It was like Eye of the Tiger or some kind of like Rocky music or I don't even remember now. But and these people got up and they started clapping. And I thought, oh my gosh. What have I just gotten into? What cult is this? I thought it was a business, and I've gotten into some kind of religious cult, and they're going to have me, ask for my house title here in a moment or something, and I'm going to be whisked off to live on some island and be chanting mantras for the rest of my life. I was really nervous. And so I remember staying in the back, and I was looking, and my buddy ran off on me. He invited me to this thing, and he's like gone. He's out circulating and mingling, and he's a more extrovert kind of guy. And so he's talking to all these other people, and I'm thinking, when we get back in the car, I'm going to kill you. Okay, I don't know what you've done. And so I'm there, and so the whole time they're up doing the clapping and getting in with the song and everything here. I remember thinking, you know what? If they don't stop all this emotional nonsense soon, and get down and talk to me about how this finance stuff really works, I'm out of here. Now, the good news is that eventually they settled down and they got down talking about it. They had some testimonials, some people who just come up with the business. And some of them were like, they were still pure emotion. This changed my life. I don't understand anything about what's going on, and I don't know anything, but this has been great. You should do it too. And I'm thinking, all right, go for it, but not yet. Need some more, okay? Need some more data. That's still not me yet. But finally, there's some people that got up and said, hey, you know what? Here's how this thing works. Here, and check this out. See if you can go to this place. It makes sense. Check this out at the Better Business Bureau. Here's some things you can look at online. Here's some information. And it turned out it was a pretty legit thing. Now, it's not for everybody, but it was a legit thing. And I share that to say, a lot of you had that kind of parallel experience with church. Some of you are kind of the people like, I was talking to Tabitha about it this week, and she said, if I had gone and they turned on that music, she said, I wouldn't even know what it was. I'd have been like, oh yeah, let's do it, She'd have been throwing the money away and just, she'd have whisked off to the island and been doing the mantras, and she wouldn't have cared, because she's more emotional. That's how she, now if it wasn't fun, then she wouldn't have cared how great it was. She wouldn't have signed up. What I'm sharing with you is this. God wants you. If you're an emotional person, God does want you to love Him with your soul. Okay, in your heart. He wants all that. Okay? If you're a more intellectual, analytical kind of person, He wants you to love Him with your mind. He really wants all of you. Some of you say, well, I only got a little bitty brain. Okay, well, easy for you to love Him with all your mind, right? Just a little bit. Some of you say, I got little bitty emotion. Easy for you to love Him with your emotion. You only got this much to invest, okay? Easy to do that. But whatever you got, God wants you to love Him with your heart, soul, and mind. And sometimes we emphasize one over the other. And so at the completion of this quest, we want you to feel like, you know what? I now know with my mind, I know it's real and I can love Him. With my soul, I can feel Him. This is not just an intellectual thing. I can experience Him as well. With my heart, my emotions, everything, I'm into this the whole way. The other thing I want us to look at before we tell you the 5 steps to go into a quest, not only do we want you to understand what faith is, I want you to know what the basic Christian worldview is. How is it that we look at the world? What's the basic story? And so in about 5 minutes here, I'm going to give you the whole story of the Bible. You guys ready? In Genesis 1, all the way to Revelation. We're not going to go through it fast, okay? This is an overview. But I want you to see this because there's different parts of this we're going to come back to. I want you to look at each component. But in Genesis 1, the Bible says that God made the world. And so every story in the Bible is part of the big story of the Bible. And every story has these 4 components in it. God's whole story of the Bible has creation, it has rebellion, it has redemption, and it has restoration. It has those 4 parts in it. Many of the individual stories that are making up this big story also have those same 4 parts in it. They have creation, rebellion, redemption, restoration. Let me give you an illustration of that. God made the world. He made it out of nothing. God is the only, as Christians we believe, the Bible says that God is really the only true creator. How many of you are creative types? I know some of you know. It's okay. You're usually the extroverts too. You're creative. Come on, come on. Put a hand up here. All right, there you go. Some of you are the creative types, okay? We were talking earlier. My dad he was the one doing the chalk drawing yesterday for some of you who saw him. He's an artist. He can do oil paintings and other things. He handed down none of his creative gene whatsoever. I can't even draw stick figures. I'm the guy, if we're ever doing Pictionary somewhere, you do not want me on your team, okay? Because I will draw things and you're just like, Matt, draw something, give us something to go with. And I can't do it. I can't go there, okay? But God is the original creator because He created out of nothing. See, every one of us, my dad can take oils and colors and make something out of them. God invented the colors. God invented the materials that we use. Every one of us, we start with something that God made, but God created everything out of nothing. And everything that He made was perfect and it had purpose because He made it. When you make something, you have purpose with it. Sometimes some of you make something and you say, I don't know what I'm going to use this for, but God had purpose for everything that He made. But we know that it doesn't take long in the Bible story. In fact, it only takes 2 chapters for it to get from perfect and full of purpose to bad. And we read about Adam and Eve, first 2 people in the world, and they only had one command, one rule, one instruction. And they disobeyed that instruction, and they said, we don't want to follow God's original purpose for the world. We want to go our own way. And they rebelled against God. They said, we're going to make our own world. We're going to use it for our own purposes. We're going to do our own thing. And so there was this rebellion against God. They chose to live their lives apart from God. And from that moment, God and mankind went 2 different ways. That's good for God. He can live on His own. He invented everything and made everything. But people, their very essence of God is tied to Him. And so they begin to die. They begin to lose energy in that life force there. God knew that wasn't going to work. And so He says, I can't just leave the story at creation and rebellion. I've got to do something to buy them back. I made them. I own them. But they're not recognizing the title I have on their life. And so now I'm going to enter into history. I'm going to become part of the story. I'm going to come here to earth, show them what God is like in human form, not just as a spirit. And I'm going to come and I'm going to actually pay for the very sin that they owe me payment for. And because I'm going to be perfect, I can do that. I can offer that perfect payment for sin. And so therefore, when Jesus died on the cross, He was offering Himself as a perfect sacrifice, a sacrifice that did not have to pay for any of His own sin, but was offering Himself as the payment for everyone's sin, past, present, and future, so they could be redeemed back to God. God bought them back. That's what the word redemption means. God isn't finished there. The story doesn't stop on Good Friday with Jesus on the cross. I'm so glad that some places you'll see that there's a cross and there's a man hanging on it. We celebrate an empty cross because Jesus didn't stay on the cross. He paid for sin, but He went in the grave for 3 days, and on Easter Sunday, He came up out of the grave. He was resurrected and began to restore everything back to its original creative force. For every person who puts their faith and trust in God, God makes you a new creation. You're back to the way it was supposed to be. You're related to God. And one day God is going to not only unite your spirit with Him, which He's already done if you've believed in Him, but He's going to give you a new physical body. He's going to end all evil that's on this world, and He's going to set everything back to the way it was when it was perfect and purposed the way He intended it to be. And He's going to put His permanent stamp on it so that it can never be changed again. Creation, rebellion, redemption, restoration. I share that story with you because I wanted to make sure that you know what is the story of Christianity and how does it play in your life? What is your part of that? And so you can also recognize it and examine it, because inside of this story, there are all kinds of things that point to whether this is true or not. There are a lot of religions today that can explain what to do with good, but they don't explain the presence of evil. There are some religions today that I believe are out of touch with reality because they explain that that pain and death and evil are illusions. They aren't real. That's how they explain it. And that if you're really trying to follow what's good, you should just, you need to turn your mind away from that and just pretend it didn't happen and focus on what is good. Well, I got news for you. The world I live in, there are tragic events, like in Connecticut, that don't make any sense if my worldview doesn't explain and include how evil got here. Now, this worldview isn't saying that evil was good, but it explains where it started, and it explains how it's going to end. It makes sense, okay? It also explains where good came from, because I think in our world you see both good and evil, and a lot of times we say, well, I don't understand. How can God be all good, but yet there's evil? Well, in this worldview, we see an explanation for it. Now, you might want to poke some more at the plausibility of it and see if it really fits or not, but here's a complete explanation. In my opinion, every other philosophy, every other religion that's out there lacks a sufficient answer for some aspect of our life. There's a lot of atheistic philosophy out there that explains how our world came to be from their theory. The problem is that there are other things that don't make sense if you only explain things from a material point of view. If you believe everything came from some element in future, and everything is about natural things and science, what's love? And where did it come from? And why do you believe in it? It doesn't fit inside your philosophy. In my opinion, the Christian worldview is the only one that explains all those things. And we're going to go into that in more depth in each of the weeks that go. But here's the verse that I want to give you, and I want to give you 5 quick steps to go on a search for truth. Deuteronomy, here's a promise from the Bible. If you don't believe the Bible, here's a promise that you can say, all right, I'm going to take this verse and use it as my first test case and see if it's true. It says, you will search for the Lord your God, and you will find Him when you seek Him with all your heart and with all your soul. It's a conditional promise. It says if you really, really, really want to find God, not the God that you want there to be, but the God who is, if you seek Him with all your heart, you will find Him. How many of you ever played hide and seek as a kid? How many of you ever had your brother, your sister want to play hide and go seek and you didn't want to play? And so you told them, all right, that's fine. You go ahead and hide first, and I'll come looking for you. I promise. All right? You weren't into it, were you? Did you find them? No. But you didn't care. You weren't into it. Some of us in our search for God and truth have done that. We're like, you know what? I kind of don't really want there to be a God. That's going to mess up some of my design for my life. And so, I'm not really going to do a search. And I'll tell you, you won't find it. In fact, everything you see in life, you'll be able to find some other explanation that won't include God in it. And it won't be because it's not true. It'll simply be because you haven't invested yourself fully in the search. So what do you need to do? If you want to really go on a truth quest, here's 5 things you need to do. Number 1, you need to admit that I don't know everything. Not that just me, but you. You need to admit that you don't know everything as well. We need to admit we don't know everything. Let's see if we can make that easy for us. How many of you today just say, you know what? I can confess this. I can be honest with this. Even if I'm an atheist today, I admit I don't know everything. Okay? All right? And some of you don't have your hands up, but your spouse is saying, you know, he's so dumb, he don't even know that he don't know everything. All right? So, I mean, that's how dumb he is. Okay? But he don't know everything. Okay? We just know that's the way it is. In James, we see this principle here. It says that God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. You know, I'm attracted to people who are more humble than proud. And I bet you are too. We don't like being around people who think they know everything and got it all together. Something about this pushes us away. And there's something about the God of the universe when He looks down at somebody who He made, and He knows how big their brain is, okay? Even the biggest brain in our world, He made all the brains. And when He sees them pushing back on Him and saying they're not even going to admit that He's there, that creates distance there. And so one of the things we need to do is at least be open to the possibility. Is it possible in the whole realm of our universe of what I don't know that maybe the knowledge of God is in that part instead of in my own brain? He says, God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. And here's another promise. If you draw near to God, He will draw near to you. If you humble yourselves before the Lord, He will exalt you. And so our first step in going for truth is I need to decide to be humble. I need to admit that there are some truths out there that I probably don't know the answer to. There are some true-sounding lies out there that some of you as believers are believing in their lives. Let me give you an example. Some of you believe that it doesn't matter if this is true or not. It only matters if Jesus, there's morals in here. It's just a nice little thing. It doesn't matter if it's true. What if it is true? Because if it is true, it really does matter because there's some other things in here about the King of the universe is coming back. And there's a judgment that's going to happen. And so if this stuff is factually true, that part really matters because that's yet to have happened and it's going to impact you. Now, if it's not true, that's fine. You could write that off. But it does matter if this is true. I've heard some of you say, and I'm not picking on any one of you here because these are things I've heard a lot of people say, God is too loving to send anyone to hell. Well, forget how that feels to you. You may not like that concept. And forget about but what if some people will end up in hell? What if there's a way to know ahead of time whether I'm going or I'm not going? You need to know that. That's important. I've heard some people say, a lot of people say, you've heard people say this, good people are going to go to heaven. Good according to who? And how good do you have to be? And how do you know ahead of time if you've been good enough? Those are questions that I have that need some more answers, need some more searching within. Are you humble enough to admit that what you previously may have thought is not correct? The second thing we need to do is I will invest time and careful consideration. I'm going to admit I don't know everything, and I will invest time and careful consideration. Remember Thomas? Doubting Thomas? What did he say? He's like, I didn't believe. And he says, I'm not going to believe unless I can see if I don't see the mark of the nails in His hands and put my finger into the mark of the nails and put my hand into His side where the Spirit went, I will never believe. And so, you know what he had to do? Now, I give him credit. He believed. But he had to actually see Jesus. He said, look, a ghost is not going to have the scars. I need to see the scar. I need to check it out. I need to actually touch it. I need to see where the Spirit went in. If you can give me that, I can go there. And you know what? The Bible doesn't really condemn that part of it. It explains that, and it says it's even blessed for people who won't get to have that privilege. You and I aren't going to get to see the scars of Jesus this side of heaven in eternity, okay? But in that day, that was some evidence that Thomas could check out. And so I want to encourage you to identify what is the question, what is the issue that's standing in the way of you having a full faith in God or a full denial of Him. What is it that you need to check out? You don't think the Bible is true? Well, what is it that really bugs you about the Bible, and how can you find out if that's true or not? What is it about the claims of Christ that you don't think He really claimed to be God? How can you check that out and find out, check that off one way or the other so you can figure out which way you need to go? Here's some of the things that we're going to be, actually, you know what, I'm going to skip through this. The video we're going to show here, Elena, I'm not going to do that now, okay? But in our the Answers in Genesis seminar this weekend, in the Answers for God question we're going to look at here, or the reason for God, the discussion group, we're going to look at some of those things. Christianity is testable. In John chapter 1, Jesus told some of His original disciples, He came to them and they saw Him be baptized by John the Baptist. And some of these original guys, they came up to Him and they said, where do you live? You ever done that? Like we want to check somebody out a little bit, Gone on a first date with somebody and said, got some questions for you, okay? Where's your family from? How much money do you make, all right? I want to know some stuff about you. And so these disciples, they come up to Jesus. They weren't following Him yet. They were checking Him out, and they said, where do you live? And notice what Jesus said with them. In John 1, you can read the story there. He says, come and see. And He says they went with Him, and they hung out with Him that whole day. And they hung out with Jesus. And you know what I think they did? It doesn't say. I think they asked Him question after question after question. They wanted to know. They saw something they thought was true, but they said, I need to check this out. Christianity can be checked out. In 1 Corinthians 15, the passage that talks about how the resurrection is all about, it's the heart of the Christian faith. It says the resurrection didn't happen, that there is no Christian faith. It doesn't say it's a really nice myth. It gives you a good idea, and and so whether it happened or not, it's still a really cool thing. Okay, doesn't matter whether it's on par with the Easter Bunny or not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't say that. It says it's the corner of the faith, and it names people who saw Jesus be raised, and it says basically if this part can be disproved, if you can go into history and you can disprove the resurrection, and you can show that it didn't happen, then you get to throw out the whole Christian faith with it and sleep in on Sundays from now on with no guilt. You can check it out. In Luke chapter 2, we know the Christmas story, right? Here's something you can check out later. Some of you know the Christmas story here, but you've forgotten some of the things. It says, in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus. Some of you know this. You're like, man, I'm hearing this. Here's this Christmas story. That the whole empire should be registered, and this first registration took place when Quirinius was governing Syria. And Joseph went up from the town of Nazareth into Galilee to Judea, the city of David, which is called Bethlehem. I want you to notice I listed a lot of names and places and dates and information right there. A lot of times we go over the Christmas story and we say, well, that's just stuff that's thrown in there. One of the things, if you read the book of Luke, right at the beginning, he says, I'm listed all kinds of stuff down that I have checked out. And by the way, in history, you can go back. For a while they thought, you know what? This part of the Bible is kind of made up because there never was a guy named Quirinius who was governing Syria. There was another guy, there was a this, there was a that, and there never was this. And recently they have found out, guess what? Oh yeah, there was a guy named Quirinius. He was governing Syria during that time, and okay, guess the Bible got that one right too. There's some parts of the Bible you may not ever be able to know or prove one way or the other, but there are many parts of the Bible that can be proved one way or another, and every part that's been able to be testable, in my opinion, is found to be true. But there are parts of the Christian faith that you can literally look at and test. Are you willing to invest the time and go there? Number one, I need to admit I don't know everything. Number two, I need to invest time and careful consideration. Number three, we've talked about this, I need to be open to whatever the truth is, wherever the evidence takes me. Psalm 119:7, here's a prayer that David prayed to God. Would you pray this prayer? I will praise you with a sincere heart when I learn your righteous judgments. Will you? That's a conditional prayer. God, if you're really there, I will follow you. Show me, and I will follow you. Will you pray that? Would you be honest to do that? We need to stop looking for the God we want and be willing to find the God who is. Number 4, not only do I need to admit I don't know everything, I need to invest time and careful consideration. I need to be open to whatever the truth is. I need to reach a verdict soon. I'm in the jury room, and I got to make a decision. Because I don't know about you, but I'm already probably over halfway through. Okay? Some of you think middle age is 50, right? How many of you think you're going to live to be 100? If middle age is 70, 35s and olders, guess what? You're there. Heading down. All right? I'm hoping 80. I'm already halfway. Heading down. Okay? Well, I'm not trying to depress you here today, but I'm trying to get real with you. Okay? You don't have forever to make a decision. Okay? We got to reach a verdict. Because whichever way you're going to believe, you only got that much more time to live that out. If there's a whole list of things you need to do that are good and right, you better start working on that. Okay? If it doesn't matter, then fine. Clear yourself of your guilt and get on with enjoying your life and create your bucket list because you only got a little bit of time to enjoy that. Whatever it is, you need to make a decision. You're in the jury room, you got to come out with something, and to not decide is to decide. If a jury comes back and they say, we're deadlocked, no decision, what happens? There's going to be a retrial, or sometimes the guy goes free. A decision has still been made. Okay? They've postponed it, or they have let him go free. A decision has been made. If you punt this down the road and say, you know what? I'm going to figure this out next Easter. I'm going to figure this out in 5 years from now. I'm going to figure it out some other time. there goes some more time of your life ticking by. It's gone, and you have invested your life worshiping or not worshiping something or someone. You're making a decision even now. And so you need to make a decision. Now, it's okay to take some time, okay? I'm not trying to rush you. But at the same time, sometimes we know that when we say, I'll think about it and I'll do it later, what we mean is I'm not going to do it, okay? And so recognize, don't fool yourself. Don't lie to yourself, but say, you know what, I'm going to make a decision. You need to have a DTR moment, a define the relationship moment, okay? How many of you, when you were dating your current spouse, one of you somewhere in your early dating days said, we need to define where this thing is going? How many of you had one of those moments? How many of you it was the lady who initiated that? Oh, really? How many was the guy? The guy did that? Wow. Okay. I thought it might have been 50-50 or balanced the other way, but I'm surprised. In our relationship, I did that, and our third date, Lane and I, we sat down and I said, all right, where's this going? Because I don't like playing the dating game. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to, either we're the one for each other, or, and I'm not saying we're going to get married right now, but I at least want to say we're trying to figure that out. Or if you're not interested in that, then cross it off and go on to the next, okay? Because I don't like playing the game, okay? And let's keep moving, okay? And but here's what's interesting: you need to know where you are, because if you're dating somebody and you think you're trying to figure out whether you're ready to get married, and after you've been dating them for 5 years, and that guy says, "No, I don't ever want to get married," oh my gosh, what did you do with 5 years of your life, right? You could have found that other guy, right? Dumped him a long time ago, or vice versa, dumped her a long time ago. Okay, you need to find that out. In your relationship with God, you need to have a DTR. You need to have a define the relationship moment. Where are we right now? What do you believe about God? Do you not even believe He's real? You need to at least know. I don't know if He's real. So that's what you need to figure out soon. I think He's real, but here's some issues or questions I have. What are they? So you can get going with that and figure out what they are. Early in our relationship, Elena made this casual comment one day. She said, she said, it's just kind of funny. She goes, I've noticed that every guy that I've ever gone out with, we've gone out like 2 months and then it was over. We broke up. We're sitting on about a month right then. And I remember thinking, okay, don't buy anything real big just yet. Let's wait. Let's wait like, 31 more days, and just see, if it wears off, Now, that's a joke, but, we were joked about it, but deep down in my heart, I was thinking, I'm not really committing myself until this thing has gone past 2 months. I might be just her latest fad of the 2-month window, right? And so can this make it to 3 months? Can this make it to 4? And once we made it to 6 or 7, I started saying, okay, now we're out of the trend. This is different, okay? This is different. But you know what? When we had our defined relationship, we said, you know what? We're going to check each other out exclusively. We're only dating each other. So we're serious about this. But my issue was, is this going to last longer than 2 months? Is this just a feeling, or we got something of substance here? So when it made it out of the 2 months, that helped me decide. It wasn't too much longer after 6, 7 months. I bought a ring, and we were engaged at about, 8 months. 8 months of going out, okay? And so you need to do that with God. Where are you right now? What's your big issue? And when are you going to decide that? Make a decision. It might take you longer than 2 months. It might take you 6 months to figure it out, but get intentional about going there. Reach a verdict. And number 5, match my life actions with true facts from this point on. Are you willing to do this? Will you promise before God, if there is a God, to yourself, will you promise, whatever I find out that I know is true, I'm going to align my life with it to the best of my ability. From this point on, this is what I'm doing. I'm not going to find out something that's true and live the other way. I'm just not doing that anymore. I'm a seeker of truth. I'm not going to live my life against the facts anymore. I'm not going to find out there's a law of gravity and then try to defy it every day. Okay? I'm going to just deal with there's gravity. Be careful. Okay? If I find out different health issues, I'm not going to say, well, yeah, I know most people, get cancer if they do that, and I'm going to try to beat the odds. I'm going to go with what I know is true. I'm going to align my life with the facts that I find. And on spiritual things, when I find out, if I find out this is true, I'm going to obey it. If I find out it's false, then I'm throwing it out and I'm going to find some other way to live. If I find out there's a God, I'm going to figure out what I can know about Him and I'm going to put myself in the right relationship with Him. If I find out there's no God, then I'm going to figure out another way to deal with my life. But I'm going to align myself with truth. Philippians 3:16, it says in the Christian faith, that's what we say to do. In any case, we should live up to whatever truth we have attained. Now here's what some of us do. Some of us say, when I figure it all out, then I'll obey the little steps. When I figure it all out, I'll obey the little steps. And God most often reveals Himself one step, one hint at a time. Will you step into the light He's given you so that He can give you light to take the next step? Will you do that? Some of you aren't going to find out the 33rd step of what God wants to show you because you haven't taken step 1 and 2 yet. I want us to close with this. In James 4, 6-10, we've read part of this already. But here's a promise from the Bible. Here's an approach we need to take. It says, God resists the proud, but He gives grace to the humble. Therefore submit to God, but resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you. Now, most of us aren't going to like these next few lines here, but this is an approach that a lot of us are going to need to take. Some of us, once we really see who God is, we're going to recognize we need to cleanse our hands because we're sinners and purify our hearts because we've been double-minded. We've been back and forth. We've been believing contradictory things. We need to be miserable and mourn and weep, okay? Now, that doesn't mean as Christians that's the whole direction of your life, okay? But most of us, when we first realize what's really true, and we recognize how we've been living the opposite of that for so long, it breaks us apart because we recognize how much time was wasted and how far gone we've been. And so most of us have to change our laughter to mourning and our joy to sorrow. But if we do that and we humble ourselves before the Lord, He will exalt us. There'll be a day when joy is going to come back. When you get aligned with truth, you come alive again. When I was 15 years of age, for a few months in my life, I said, I have grown up in a Christian home and been taught all the things about Christ, but you know what? I've got no more reason to believe what I believe than a boy growing up in Iran is a Muslim. I believe it because that's what I've always been taught. That's what my family's taught me. I got no other reason for that. And I see some issues that my parents have. They're good people, but they didn't know everything, and they didn't always do everything exactly right, just like nobody else does. And so I said, they could be wrong. And I don't want to be wrong. I want to know what's right. And so until I can figure it out for myself, I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to go my own way. And so for a few months there, I kind of did my own search of what was real and what wasn't. And what I found was there's a whole lot of questions that I didn't get answers for, but what I found is that when I took God out of the picture, there weren't any answers for anything. There were some things that God just wouldn't tell me yet, but there were some things there just wasn't any explanation for. And what I recognize is for me, the real deal wasn't intellectual. The real deal was more with my will, my stubbornness. Any stubborn people out there? All right? And I recognize, you know what my problem was? My problem is that I knew there was a God. I could sense Him, and intellectually I saw some reasons and philosophies that pointed toward Him. I needed faith to go the rest of the way. But deep down, I knew there was a God. I knew it. I knew He was real. And I knew the Bible was true. But the problem for me is that I knew that if I did everything the Bible said, that meant that I put my life in God's hands and I did what He wanted me to do with the rest of my life. And that was the part I didn't like. Because I wanted to take my life in my direction. I had some plans for my life. I had some things I wanted to do. I had some things I wanted to experience. And that's what I didn't want to do. And finally there was a day where I said, all right, I can't do it. I'm giving my life over to You. My plans are going on the shelf and I'm following You. I'm going to humble myself. And you know what? For a while there was some weeping and mourning because I recognized for too long, for 15 years, I had lived my life the way I wanted to. I had lived my life in rebellion against God. And now it was time to turn things over to Him. And I can tell you this, not every question in my life has been answered totally to my satisfaction. But every time I've wanted to poke my faith and say, is there anything behind it? I've been able to find there's stuff there. There's a foundation behind our faith. It's real. It's true. There is evidence out there. And I'm confident that you'll be able to find what you need to back up. God Jesus Bible. You'll be able to find it. It's there. I know some of it, and I can point you to where some other things are. But when push comes to shove at the end of the day, you're going to have to decide, what am I going to do with the truth that I found? Am I going to place myself under the hands of God, or am I going to go my own way? Some of you today might say, you know what? I already have heard enough. I got some more questions, and I'm going to have them the rest of my life. I'll still have them even when I die and I stand before God. But you know what? I know enough now to reach a verdict. I may not know how the guy did the crime, but I know it's happened. Okay? I know he did it. Okay? Well, you may not know everything about God, but you know He's real. And I know we're going to have to answer to Him one day. And if that's the case, here's really all you need to do to respond to the Christian message. You don't have to know every verse in the Bible. Thank goodness, right? You don't have to know every little thing, but you have to know enough to say, you know what? I know I've been wrong against the God of the universe. I know I deserve whatever He wants to hand out to me. And I know I can't get back to Him on my own. But today I want to come to Him and say, if you can bring me back to you through Jesus, then I say yes to you, whatever that means for the rest of my life. That's really all it means, to come to Jesus and say yes to Him. And some of you may be at that point today, and I want to give you that opportunity. Some of you may want to pray and consider this further. If you pull out your connection card, I've got 4 decisions, 4 things to look at there. One of them is that I want every single one of you to do this right now. Pull out your connection card and turn on the other side. And I want every one of you to define where you are right now. Some of you might say this, I'm the letter A. A means I already am a believer. I came in here today already believing. Doesn't mean I've got every question answered and I still got some issues, but I believe in Jesus. I'm trying to follow Him. The letter B means today. Today I am believing in Him. Today I'm going to pray and trust, put my faith in Him and follow Him from this point on. I wasn't when I came in, but today I am. The letter C is that, you know what, I got some issues and some things I got to consider. I'm not ready to put my full faith in Christ yet. I'm kind of like you at that financial meeting. I'm sitting in the back waiting to hear some more, okay? That's okay. What I would love for you to do is, what are some of your questions? What are some of your issues? We'll pray with you. If there's some relevant information we can get to you, we'll get that to you. We want to help you because we've all been there at different stages of our life. And then some of you, just being intellectually honest, you need to say, I'm neither A, B, or C, I'm D. I don't believe, and I don't think I ever will. And here's my promise to you. I appreciate your honesty. We will not bug you, okay? I am not going to bombard you with mail. I will not stop by your house and bring my 50-pound Bible and try to knock you over the head with it, okay? I will leave you alone. I respect your honesty. From a distance, I'll pray for you. And if you don't believe in prayer, you know you think that won't do anything, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'll pray for you. But I think it's still helpful for you to say, this is where I am, okay? What I don't want any of us to do is to say, where's that E option? There isn't one, okay? A, B, C, or D. Where are you today? Have you identified that? For those of you who are B, I want to stop and just pray for you and with you right now. So if you could just bow your heads with me and just respect the people around you who may be at this point. And for those of you who say, you know what, today I'm B. That's where I am. I just want you just to kind of look up at me, okay? If you're looking up at me, I'm assuming that you're B, okay? I'm talking to you. I'm not going to call out your name. I'm not going to point at you. I'm not going to say what you're wearing or anything like that. But say, today I'm B. I didn't come in here necessarily there, but today I'm B. Okay? I see you. Okay? What I want to ask you to do is this. If you're ready to believe in Jesus, all He wants you to do is just simply talk to Him right now. You don't have to know everything about God, but say, God, from this point on, I'm putting my life in your hands and I'm following you. Okay? I know enough to respond in that way. So I'm humbling myself now and saying I'm going to follow you. And so today, right now, you can pray. I'm going to lead us in a prayer. And if you just want to express, you can repeat the words I'm saying, or you can say some of your own that say the same thing to God. You can pray to Him kind of like this. You ready? Dear Jesus, thank you for dying on the cross for me. I do not understand it all. But I know I put you there, and I know it was for me. And today, I'm ready for you to change me, for you to resurrect me, to recreate me back the way that you wanted me to be all along. From this point on, I'm following you. with all that I have. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.